So in this next part of 6.3, what we're going to do is use more general ways of converting equations. We all are converting coordinates and converting equations. With the first set of problems, the first day of notes, we did it all with 30, 60, 90, and 45, 45, 90 triangles. But there actually is a more generic version we can use even if the points aren't on perfect spots on the unit circle. And there's two sets of them. And one is kind of meant for if you already have your point in polar and you want the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate for rectangular, you just take the r value times the cosine of theta to get the x, and you take the r value times the sine of theta to get the y. The only thing you need to be careful of is when you're actually typing this in, if it's not a unit circle number, make sure you're in the right mode, either degrees or radians. On the other hand, if you are trying to go from rectangular coordinates where you have an x and a y and we want to get the r value and the theta value, then we have these other set of equations on the right. X squared plus y squared equals r squared. And to be honest, not a lot of times, but sometimes it helps to rearrange that. And if you take the square root of both sides, you can get a slightly different version, which is that r equals the square root of x squared plus y squared. And sometimes it helps when you're substituting to use that version right off the bat. The other one is theta, our angle that we need, is equal to the inverse tangent of y over x. And there are times as well where if you actually take the tangent of both sides here, the tangent of theta is just the tangent of theta. And then that equals the tangent. If you take the tangent of the inverse tangent, those would actually cancel, and you'd just be left with y over x. And so depending what you start with, you might want one of these two tweaked versions over on the right as well. But let's tackle some problems. So the first one, we're going to convert a point that's in polar, 5, 135 degrees, to rectangular coordinates. Okay, and this is actually a unit circle value. 135 is on a unit circle, so I'm going to show you two different ways. First, we'll do the exact. If they ask you, if it specifically says in the problem, what is the exact value for the rectangular coordinates? First, we would, according to our formula up here, the x-coordinate will be the r value times the cosine of the angle. But then in this case, the cosine of 135 is the x-coordinate at 135, which is negative square root 2 over 2. So this actually becomes 5 times negative root 2 over 2. And that's our x-coordinate. We'll do the same thing with y. Y would be 5 again, but now it's times the sine of 135. And so then we're going to take 5 times the sine of 135 is positive root 2 over 2. And so if they asked you for the exact rectangular coordinates, we would have to write negative 5 root 2 over 2, comma, 5 root 2 over 2. If they didn't ask for the exact coordinates, or if they even specifically said the decimal, then to get your coordinates, you're just going to type this whole thing in. I would type in 5 times the cosine of 135. And since my angle is in degrees, when I type this in, I want my mode to be in degrees. So 5 cosine 135, that decimal would be negative 3.54 if we round. And then the y-coordinate is 5 times the sine of 135, which would be positive 3.54, which makes sense because when we did it exactly, we got the same thing, but the x-coordinate was negative. So if I did the decimal version, that would be my coordinate. Okay. Now in a problem like this, we have 4, 88 degrees in polar, and we want to go to rectangular. Well, 88 degrees is not on the unit circle, so our only option is to type this in. So my x-coordinate would be 4 cosine of 88 degrees, which is 0.14, so 0.14 And my y coordinate would be 4 sine of 88 degrees, which is, well, it's 3.997, but if we're round to like the nearest hundredth, we would end up rounding to 4.00. So then my coordinate would just be 0.14, comma 4. You wouldn't have to write the 0.00. So that's converting from polar to rectangular. That's pretty straightforward. Just fill them in and maybe use unit circle, but a lot of times we can type them.